Good evening. Welcome to another edition of the 411 Talk Zone radio show. My name is Leon Jones, and I want to wish everybody a Merry Christmas. This is the Christmas edition, and I'm going to make a short video. This is a teaching video, an educational video. This video is going to be a little bit on a civics lesson to help you all become more informed voters instead of voting partisan or instead of voting symbology. And I'm going to talk about how the government creates, how each branch of the government creates checks and balances. This is how it's supposed to work. Now, of course, doesn't always work that way with the partisanship going on in this country. But this video, I'm just going to give you a little bit of insight on how the checks and balances from each branch is executed. Now, first of all, you must understand that there are three branches of government: the executive, the judicial, and of course, the legislative branch. Now, we have a parliamentary style government, just like in England, where England has the Prime Minister, the House of Commons, and the House of Lords. We have the President, the Senate, and then we have the Congress. But a lot of people still don't understand government. And when you go out to vote, many people believe that we should just vote for the president. Also, the same rules of government work for your local and your state government as well. In your state government, you have your governor, you have your state house, and your state senate. Works the same way for a city. You have your city council, you have your mayor, you have your county council, you have your county executive. In other words, the government works just like a corporation. Now remember something, we're not a democracy, we are a republic. Now, let me share my screen and let's get into how each branch works. Now, again, the Constitution of the United States divides the federal government into three branches: the legislative, executive, and judicial branch. This ensures that no individual or group will have too much power. In other words, the founding fathers discovered that we don't need a monarchy like England. In other words, a king. Now, see, if we had a king, ruler, we would be under a fascist type of government. Now, if you looked at my video last week, 2 weeks ago, I gave you the political philosophies. Now, again, let's talk about the legislative branch right now. The legislative branch is made up of Congress, which incorporates the Senate and the House of Representatives. Now, we're dealing right now with the US government, which is the federal government. But the same thing applies to the local government, just as I mentioned. So again, when we deal with the legislative branch, it is made up of Congress, the Senate, the state, or in the House of Representatives. Again, the legislative branch is made up of Congress. They're the ones that sit in the Capitol in Washington, D.C. And the Congress includes the Senate and the House of Representatives and special agencies and offices that provide support services to Congress. Now, the legislative branch's role includes they draft proposed laws, they confirm or they reject presidential nominees for heads of federal agencies, federal judges, and the Supreme Court. And it's the Congress that has the ability, under your legislative branch, the authority to declare war. That is the authority, not the ability, the authority to declare war. That's the legislative branch. Then we get to the executive branch. And the key roles include where you have the president. The president is the head of state, leader of the federal government, and the commander in chief of the United States Armed Forces. Then there's the vice president. The vice president supports the president. If the president is unable to serve, vice president becomes the president. And you have also something else you need to understand about the vice president. The vice president also presides over the U.S. Senate and breaks ties in Senate votes. In other words, the vice president is the president of the Senate. And then you have all of your cabinet members. These are the members that must be confirmed by the Senate, which is part of the legislative branch. And basically, the cabinet members serve as advisors to the president. They include the vice president, heads of executive departments, and other high-ranking government officials. Cabinet members are nominated by the president and must be approved by the Senate, with the exception of the vice president. The vice president is the running mate of the president when they are running for president. And then they win the election, just like this 2024 election. J.D. Vance was President Trump's running mate. Now he's the vice president elect. Then we get to the judicial branch. That includes the Supreme Court and other federal courts. It evaluates laws by interpreting the meaning of laws, applies laws to individual cases, and it decides if laws violate the Constitution. Now, how each branch of government provides checks and balances. Well, the ability of each branch to respond to the actions of the other branch is the system of checks and balances. We call them checks and balances. It's like accounting. You have to balance everything out. Now, each branch of government can change acts of the other branches. In other words, the president can veto legislation created by Congress. He or she also nominates heads of federal agencies and high court appointees, confirms, and the Congress confirms or rejects the president's nominees. It can also remove the president from office in exceptional circumstances. And only the Senate can do that, not the House. The House can impeach the president, but the Senate can remove the president. That's what you must understand. And also, the justices of the Supreme Court, nominated by the president and confirmed by the Senate, and the Supreme Court can overturn unconstitutional laws. And as we get into the checks and balances, well, again, as I said before, the Constitution divided the government into three branches: legislative, executive, and judicial. This was important because it gave specific powers to each branch, and it set up something called checks and balances. Just like the phrase sounds, the point of checks and balances was to make sure that no branch would be able to control too much power. And it created a separation of powers. Now, here are some examples so you understand of how the branches, although they're different, they work together. Now, the legislative branch makes laws, but the president in the executive branch can veto those laws with a presidential veto. Now, the legislative branch makes laws, but the judicial branch can declare those laws unconstitutional. Now the executive branch, through federal agencies, has the responsibility for day-to-day enforcement and administration of federal laws. These federal departments and agencies have missions and responsibilities that vary widely, from environmental protection to protecting the nation's borders. Again, the president and the executive branch can veto a law, but the legislative branch can override that veto with enough votes. Also, the legislative branch has the power to approve the presidential nominees. That's the Senate. Control the budget. That's the House. And can impeach the president, which that's the House and the Senate, and remove him or her from the office, and that's the Senate. The Senate can remove the president, whereas the House controls the budget. The Senate, they approve the presidential nominees, and both the House and Senate can impeach the president. Now, the executive branch can declare executive orders, which are like proclamations that carry the force of law, but the judicial branch can declare those acts unconstitutional. Now, again, the judicial branch interprets the laws, but the president nominates Supreme Court justices, Court of Appeals justices, and district court justices who make the evaluations. And the federal, under the U.S. government, also the judicial branch interprets laws, but the Senate and the legislative branch confirms the president's nominations for the judicial positions, and Congress can impeach any of those judges and remove them from office. And again, that is how our system of government works. Now, you also have state and local governments as well. And again, under your state governments, they're set up the same way. Your county governments, they're also set up the same way. So, most important topic in this conversation is, how does this government function? So when you go out and vote, you know what you're voting for. In fact, when we get to the local government, you actually vote for the judges. So all judges don't have lifetime appointments like the federal Supreme Court does. And also, you vote on initiatives. And these initiatives are set forth by legislation. Again, an example of how all this works. Let's look at that bill that was put up. Now, I believe in a line item veto, where the bill will go from the House to the Senate to the president. He'll read the bill and he'll line out what he doesn't believe is constitutional. And then he could either veto it or send it back to Congress, and they would have to start all over again. Same with the governors. Same with the county execs. Same with mayors. And it's very, very important that you understand how government works, because there are a lot of laws that are made and there are a lot of laws that are not enforced, like gun laws. There are numerous gun laws on the books that are not enforced, but the Democratic Party, they want to make new laws. This is why you always hear we don't need new gun laws. We need to enforce the ones on the books. And basically, you have to have laws to keep an orderly society. Now, some laws, in my humble opinion, like the divorce laws, are old and they need to be changed. Why? Because nowadays, you don't have the woman sitting at home like she used to. See, when culture changes, you also have to change the laws according to the culture. Somewhat, somewhat. Again, I'm using the genders. You know, when the women stayed home and the man worked, and then the man decided he wanted to leave, well, he was responsible for making sure that he took care of his children and, of course, his wife through alimony and child support. And for the most part, the woman got custody of the kids. Nowadays, things have changed. But the laws, the divorce laws, are still the same. And I'm just giving you examples of laws that need to be changed. A law that was changed when I was coming up back in 1982, the alcohol law. Well, it used to be 18, then it went to 21. Now, if you were born at that time in 1982, it was still 18, but for me, it was 21. You also have to be 16 to drive a car or to get a license. That's much better, to get a license. Federal minimum wage, that's a law. It's approved by Congress. So every new law that is legislated must go right through Congress to the president. And sometimes it goes to the Supreme Court. But basically, that is how your branches of government work. And you should study the branches of government. And you should always look at your leaders to see how they're voting. So you don't vote for somebody just because they're women, just because they're black. And that's the problem with black people. They want to see the first black, but just because you're black, you look at some of the cities out here that are run particularly by black Democrats. Look at Chicago, look at Baltimore, DC, Atlanta, Houston, Boston, Los Angeles, Milwaukee, Philadelphia. The Democrats really don't offer anything, in my humble opinion, except for more and more welfare. They're too, in my humble opinion, friendly to criminals. Like, and shout out to Minister Jack for bringing this up. And he's a source that I'm using because it is true. There are a number of men out there when that illegal, that migrant, burned that lady alive. But then you had that Marine that went and subdued that black man because that black man was threatening to kill everybody. Well, that Marine subdued that black man and they wanted to arrest the black man. Now, these are laws that definitely have to be changed. And if you think about it, this is why people don't want to get involved. But the laws are backwards. But it is true. The Democrats, they are pro-criminal. You look at what happened back in 2020. A lot of these individuals who were part of Antifa and Black Lives Matter, they destroyed Minneapolis, Minnesota, and other cities. They never went to jail. But you look at what happened on January 6th. Those individuals did time. Bottom line is, this is the inconsistency of the laws. And this is why you should be weary of the Democratic Party. Democratic Party operates more on redistribution of wealth. I call it laziness. They utilize the term equality for redistribution of wealth. They really want a socialist society. They really don't want protection of the border. And there's some Republicans that don't want it either. Why? Because if they own businesses, well, they can go ahead and use the migrants basically for free labor. And the Democrats can use the migrants for more votes. This is why there was a lot of shenanigans going on during this election, but it was caught during this election. So I'm just giving you examples of how twisted some of the laws are. But to be an informed voter, and you should learn this in high school. You don't even need a college degree. You got a number of individuals out there that have college degrees, master's and doctor's degrees, still stupid as hell. They're not going to tell this to you because, again, college civics is going down the drain for political correctness. And you have a number of these individuals who are in college teaching students how to be lazy, grifters. That's what they are. But in the end, you must educate yourself on how the government is supposed to function. And if it's not functioning correctly, get involved. Be like Charlie Kirk, get people on the ground. This is why we want the Democrats to stay out of power, because they want a society that accepts any type of behavior. They want their version. They don't want the traditional version, the judicial Christian concept. That's what our society is based off of. And looking at what happened during this legislation, this election, this is what you got. People move more and more to the right. So what I did was just give you an overview on the three branches of government: the judicial, legislative, and of course, the executive. The executive utilizes executive orders. Congress, they deal with the budget, impeachment. They also deal with nominees, appointing or rejecting nominees. And then you have the Supreme Court, which is under the judicial branch, and they evaluate laws. That's basically what you need to know about laws. And then you need to look at how laws are written, because sometimes they put language in laws that we don't understand. And this is why when Congress puts a bill out, everybody should read the bill. If you see a bill that has a lot of pages in it, be skeptical of that bill, because it's going to be a lot of fat in it. That's just what happened to this budget bill. And I believe that this president is trying to sabotage the next president to make it very difficult for him. But we voted, people like me, we voted to make sure that this country is not destroyed. And the people who are in power, particularly the Democrats, we didn't get all of them out. But in 2026, take this information that I'm giving you, understand how government works, understand your congresspeople, your senators. And that's on all levels: local, state, and federal. If they're not doing a job, regardless of what party, what do? Vote them out. But you want to become an informed voter. Because if you listen to the media is not informing you. The media is on the side of the Democratic Party. We're the new media here. And I'm the one that's giving you some good teaching on how the government is supposed to function. So take all the information from this video and get more insight yourself, because you always want to vote for what's going to make your life better. But you have to understand, we live in the United States of America. There's some people who don't like this country, but we must continue to be patriots to save this country. Get educated, and remember, you don't need a degree to be educated. You need to have the insight, and that's what makes you an informed voter. So understand civics. Understand the checks and balances system. And if you use a little bit of common sense, you will vote based on policy and not on emotion. And that's my commentary for this edition of the 401 Talk Zone radio show right here on YouTube. If you like what I just presented, please comment, share, and subscribe. And if you're looking for some STEM content, you check me out on my second channel, the QCIS channel. On that channel, I give you a daily dose of science, technology, engineering, and math. And here's where you can find me. My main channel, which is this one, the 401 Talk Zone radio show channel, which I present content just about every Wednesday. You can find me on, of course, YouTube, Rumble, X, formerly Twitter, and Truth Social. And for the QCIS channel, you can find me on YouTube, which I've been doing videos sporadically outside of Thursday, but it's mainly every Thursday I put out the QCIS content. You can find me on the QCIS channel on YouTube, Twitter, or X, formerly Twitter, and LinkedIn. And I want to wish everybody a Merry Christmas. Here's something you need to know as well. Always be blessed for what you have. And this day should tell you everything. Be blessed. Be blessed for what you have. Don't worry about what you don't have. Always know that the sun rises in the east and sets in the west. And if it doesn't apply, let it fly. But if the shoe fits, wear it. If you don't like the shoe, change it. Once again, thank you for listening to this edition of the 411 Talk Zone radio show right here on YouTube. Till next time, my name is Leon Jones. I want you all to have a wonderful and gracious evening and Merry Christmas. And be safe. And again, thank you again for listening to this commentary right here on the 401 Talk Zone radio show. Till next time, my name is Leon Jones. I want you all to have a wonderful and gracious evening. God bless you. I'm out.